I'm Lou Rosalia, and this is Crew Call. It's your choice to either edit, code, or design. What would you pick? And the debate over the effectiveness of pro versus amateur looking video in marketing. This week on Crew Call. Guys, welcome, welcome, welcome. So glad to see everybody. We have our usual esteemed panel of geniuses, all COVID tested for this virtual event. We've got Mr. Joe Ferro. Joe, good to see you. Frank Ferro and Scott Glozzi. Welcome back, guys.
Thanks, Lou.
What's up, Lou?
Yep.
Could
Good
this
day,
now
Mr.
be the sign that everybody uses for vaccinated?
Yeah. I don't know. That was V for victory for one of the big wars.
All right, how about this way?
The
backwards one, yeah.
One of the big wars.
You of the many, there was the two biggies, World War I and II. And
Oh, I got it. VX.
Yay!
Nice.
Oh,
Nice. Vaccinated.
Okay.
Talking about what we should do and polls and all this other stuff. I literally actually took this Twitter poll today, and it asked the following questions, and I thought they were pretty interesting, and I thought I'd bring it to you guys. So I'm going to read the actual poll, and then I'm going to ask the questions. So the question on the poll was, which skill would be most helpful to add to your current portfolio of skills? One was audio editing, second was coding, third was graphic design, and fourth was video editing. So audio, coding, graphic design, or video editing. So I thought, with all your highly skilled abilities, if you guys had to pick a first and a second choice of which one of those four you'd add, what would it be? So Joe, I'll start with you. What's your first choice as an additional skill and why?
Coding.
Coding. Really? I didn't think you were going to go that way. Go ahead. Why?
The other, I not to be a moke here, but the other ones I know how to do, and I can advance if I want. But coding is, honestly, I think coding is the future. If you don't know how to code, you're going to get left out, because everything in every place is about coding. Some of the interviews I've been doing with production guys now who've been working on all this IP, remote, virtual stuff, they all had to learn how to code to get the gear to do what it had to do. And they're not. I mean, they're the farthest thing from engineers. So my vote is coding.
Good vote. Good
Joe
vote.
out.
Frank, thinking about what you could do with this skill next, what would be your first choice to add and why?
I would also go coding.
Really? Two for
Yeah.
coding, marking it down.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Why?
Well, because of during COVID, learning how to do some web design with FerroCity and being like heavily involved in like building that website and everything. There's a lot of limitations that I had because I didn't know how to, customize something via code or put custom code into stuff, which I learned a little bit about, but not like to the point where I could just, be like, okay, this page I want to completely redo and not use some of the web design platform that we were using, like use their, I guess preset stuff and kind of customize it a little more. So yeah, definitely that.
Interesting. Gloss, what was your first choice?
What were the four? It was audio, editing, coding, graphics, and video, right?
Yep, audio.
Video. So my first, just because it's a current project I'm working on, is going to be audio editing. So I do a lot of voiceovers here. We talked about it before, throwing the blanket over your head and going in the closet, all that good stuff. Wait. After that, I have to make it sound good. So I got to do a little bit of audio editing. So I would want to brush up my skills there. I'm not so much into the coding as Joe and Frank are, but I mean, yeah, it's a good skill too. But audio for me.
So go a little bit deeper into explaining throwing a blanket over your head and going into the closet. I know we addressed it on an earlier episode. What you're talking about the studio at the house, correct?
In terms of audio quality, yeah, there's quality you can get in mic, and then there's quality you can get in post. So what we're talking about is post audio editing. That's what I want to brush up on. But in terms of getting the best out of your microphone, you don't want a lot of bounce or high ceilings, things like that. So throw a blanket over your head, you grab your best mic, you go in the closet, and good to go.
That's awesome. Joe, what would be your second if you had to have one? I guess there's not too many left. You already mastered audio and video.
I haven't mastered any of them, but thank you. Speaking of audio, Gloss, watch your mic levels. So the other thing, the thing I really want to also just mention here is coding. We all talk about it very cavalier, and I'm sure I can't even say, I don't know who knows and who doesn't know what the word means. Code is the instructional set that computers learn on and learn how to operate. So inside your computer, there's these languages. It's an instruction set is really what it's called. So it's an instruction set to tell the computer, when this happens, do this. When that happens, do this. Add these two together, da 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 da. So there's this very complex set of instructions, and that's what we're talking about when you're going into coding. You want to change the instruction set so it can do more or less of what you're talking about.
Understood.
What was your question?
What was your second choice besides
my
coding,
second
if you had
choice?
a-
I guess I'm going to do the same thing Gloss just said. I'm going to say editing, video editing, because I've been doing a lot of it lately, and I come up against limitations. It wasn't something I've had to self-taught. I've been around enough edit rooms, so I know I know what I want, which is actually worse, because I know I know the end result and I know exactly, but don't know how to get there. So I've been spending a lot of time watching tutorials, talking to my editors, asking a billion questions. So video editing is my second choice.
Frank, you picked coding as your first choice, as Joe did. What would your second choice be, and would it have helped you with the project you were working on, which is why you picked coding, the FerroCity stuff?
Graphic design.
Graphic design.
Yeah, I mean, it goes hand in hand with building the website and all that kind of stuff, just because, again, like customizing certain areas, or, doing something more than putting like a picture background, or making simple things on the very consumer graphic design thing we use, which is Canva, which is great. I mean, it helps a lot, and there's a lot of things on there, but it's more of a, like I said, kind of consumer Photoshop, like nowhere near in depth as that. So yeah, I would say that would definitely enhance my design skills, I guess, especially going along with the website. So yeah, I think those two together would be very helpful.
Gloss, I'm going to break format with you. What would be your second choice? Then I'm going to say, if that wasn't available, what would you default to after that?
Ooh.
So you had audio, coding, graphic design, video editing.
I was gonna say graphic design again with Frank, but if that's not available, so I would say, have you ever heard of Cinema 4D?
No.
It's so Cinema 4D is a software where you create graphics and you have the 3D space that you're editing in. Is as simple as I could put it, I guess. And it's really cool because you kind of have the freedom to build basically whatever you want. It's kind of like if you ever seen I'm gonna sound stupid here, but if you ever heard of the video game Minecraft, you're building in a 3D space and you're building with 1x1 blocks on top of each other, and you can kind of build out in any direction, forward, backwards, left, right, in any space you want, and the limitations are kind of endless. So it's kind of cool when you implement that into video. You can build out your graphics, your lower thirds on your video, which is like titling, and it just adds a whole nother element. You don't have to outsource for a graphic editor now. I would say that Cinema 4D would be the software that I want to learn. It's a lot though.
Yeah.
No, it's mine. That was the other thing
learn.
I was just going to say. All these things, Lou.
Yeah.
Adobe has a suite of some of the most incredible applications, and because I'm 120 years old, I was around when this stuff was brand new, and the simplicity of what it was then, but because it was such a reach in our heads to like even know to do this, that I look at it now and go, wow. And it became very vertical. People have learned and spent it's like the Japanese culture of bonsai trees. You get that, you spend generations of one thing, just getting your craft down in that one area. And 4D is sick. I want to play with everything. So my question would be every one of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. If you had that, what is it called? Full stack? When you're a developer, you have
Yes.
all those skills in one. That would be a total full stack to make you a pretty powerful
Yes.
person in getting stuff done. I want to go to topic 2. I read a blog over the weekend, and it caught my eye because it kind of flipped things on its head, and it was about people grabbing iPhones and doing their commercials and putting them out there. And it was from the marketing perspective, is that more effective than professionally produced pieces? Now, I have the answer according to what the marketing people say, and I'll give it to you in the end. But I was wondering, Joe, what are your thoughts on the whole thing, actually? VX. Got it. Got it. Done. Another one for VX.
I have a lot of opinions about this, as you and I know.
Yeah,
We've had many conversations talking from a production to a marketing and from a marketing to production.
Yes.
Yes, especially like the 13s and the Samsung, they're amazing. I mean, they're almost ridiculous. Frank was showing me my daughter, his sister, just got one, and the cameras are it's pro. I mean, I can't argue with it, but they're not full stack. You know, if you're a camera operator, great. If you're an LD, great. If you're a designer, great. If you're a producer, great. But if you're just somebody with a phone, not so great. Because you still have to have, in my opinion, you still have to have a conceptual eye. You still have to have, what am I doing with this? What am I trying to accomplish? With all of that said, I have conceded to the marketing. I understand it. I have been around, I've been around long enough to have watched evolution and de-evolution in my eyes of everything. Mm-hmm. And, even the bastardization of some really great technology that got simplified or thrown aside. So my long answer here is I don't like it, but I understand why it's relative, and it does empower people. And I wish Apple would pull that commercial for their 13 off the air, because it's like the home renovation shows that go, okay, now we're going to put the tile down. Yeah. And then they cut and they come back. 16 carpenters come in, lay tile, they come back, and the one guy's standing there, well, I put the tile down. No, you didn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the same thing with these things, showing you can make your movies, you could go out, you could do all this other stuff. They're trucking on rails, pulling this through. Stop it. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No.
So you're telling me they lie in commercials?
You know what's funny about that? They're shooting a commercial that's about making a movie on an iPhone, but what they're shooting it with is what? Like you know what I mean? Like it's not an iPhone. That's
great pull. That's a great pull. And yes, Frank, I'm sorry to reveal the big secret. Damn. Commercials lie.
Wow. Never knew that.
Joe, you actually brought up a point that I didn't think about, but it's really relevant, is that even it's not so much the argument of are you shooting with an iPhone or with professional gear and stuff. It's the talent behind it and what you need to do to get the whole thing set up and framed and creative. There's so much more to it than the simple question I asked. So
but that's in anything, right? Like
yes.
it's the old school thing. It's not the tool, it's the carpenter, or it's not the
yes.
it's not the arrow, it's the Indian or anything like that. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
Yes.
You could have the best tool in the world, but if you don't know how to use it, then what good is it?
So You know what? The question I'm going to ask you, Frank, we actually just led into it, and I was going to ask you, do you see any real benefit of professionals intentionally creating seemingly unprofessional footage? And the answer is yeah, right?
Well, so it's funny that you bring this up, only because I just realized something the other day. Not realized, but I witnessed something the other day. I was on a shoot for a specific team, so I was at their arena doing interviews with the coach and the GM. But then off to the side on a different part of the room was, I don't know if he was part of the social team or their like in-house production team, but he was doing a shoot with the players. And what he was setting up, and then I heard him explaining, he set up a small, I don't even know what kind of camera it was, but a small real camera, not a phone, on a set of sticks. But it was pointing at obviously where the player was going to stand. He had like a little locker background. But what he was trying to mimic was as if you were holding a cell phone, and like he wanted it was kind of cool what he was doing. And then I heard him explaining to the players when they walked in, he's like, all right, this is going to be like as if you were, had your phone and you were like taking a video and you're talking. He's like, so you can actually he had the handle on the camera, and he was like, you manipulate the camera, you can tilt up, pan left, right, whatever, and like kind of move it around as if you're doing it from your phone. But he's doing it with a real camera. So it kind of merged those two things, right? Like what you're saying is like, as from a marketing aspect, yes, it gives you that perspective of that, but at least it's still done professionally, and there's a purpose to it.
That's a perfect setup.
Yeah, it's like I'm thinking this is like special effects, using pro gear, special effected to look like handheld. I mean the iPhone stuff.
But when stuff's done professionally and purposefully, then you can really tell that. Like, I mean, So yeah. I'm not going to keep going into it, but yeah.
Klaus, I'm going to go to Steadicam and just ask you if handheld jittery is kind of the in thing for marketing. Doesn't that crush Steadicam work?
Well, yeah, but it's like these guys are saying, like you got to choose the right tool for the look. You know what I mean? So if you're trying to get that more intimate look, you're not going to use a Steadicam anyway. So if you put your hand, you put your hand here, it looks like I'm moving you around and you're my iPhone. You're not going to use a Steadicam for that because you want it to be jittery and you want those imperfect movements to happen like you're holding a phone. So no, it's it's not going to affect Steadicam. It's just the right tool for the job.
Joe, you told me a story a while back about days of MTV. Remember that when they had music videos?
Yeah, I do.
And you were there for some of that, I would imagine. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, what happened when you used this term once, and I don't remember what it is for the life of me, and you called it Dutch, and you related it to the MTV story. Did I recall this properly? Can you set that up?
Yes, that is a term.
Okay, go ahead.
It's absolutely a term. But let me jump back to just qualify what these guys are talking about.
Sure.
The show The Office, and everybody knows
what I was going to bring up. It's actually what I was going to say, and I want to go into it.
The Office was shot to look like a doc-style reality kind of drop-in show. They purposely, their cameras never settle on a subject. But it's not really that happening. There's a pro sets. There's people there. Everything's lit. There's rehearsal. It's all done specifically. Even the old reality shows, they're done with, maybe 30 cameras that are done. What's the one, the Survivor, the Island, whatever those things are. There's gear, there's people, there's lighting, there's everything. Everything has that, everything that you watch that looks bad. It's like movies, like Schindler's List. If it wasn't treated in the black and white that he treated it, it wouldn't have had the impact. But they didn't shoot it that way. Because as Frank said right in the beginning, it's purposeful. You have to know what you're going after and then changing it. Okay, MTV. MTV, around those days, was launched with and around a bunch of people who didn't know what we were doing, myself included. We had no real skills. The camera operators were 12 years old. The audio guys weren't audio people. They were postmen. There was just people thrown together that were doing this because Viacom hired us because we were dirt cheap, and they were producing to an audience that knew less than we did about what they wanted. So the thing I just said about shaky cams and all that, that didn't come because it was purposeful. It came because they were incompetent. And I apologize to all you camera ops who work with me in those days, but we all know it. Bad audio, bad producing and directing.
Yeah.
I was horrible at it. I had no idea what I was doing. But that whole style became a style. And then as we moved into other genres, they wanted to capture that audience. This all sounds familiar to you.
Yeah.
They wanted to capture a youthful audience and a new audience that was accustomed to garbage production. So we had to take pros in these other genres and teach them how to shoot garbage. When I first started shooting sports, I had my cameras all Dutch, shoot on an angle. I think about it now. We shot football on an angle. Why? But it was cut crazy. There were sound effects thrown in. It was the shows that we produced for the NFL back in the day, because their whole thing was about producing for the X generation, which was the millennials of that day. And so we had to give them what they were accustomed to. Then MTV, today YouTube. It's all the same. Nothing changes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, there's my MTV answer to you. Dutch is this.
Thank you. Thank you. Frank, I want to talk about shaky cam. And in that, I know we wrote an article on one of the blogs on FerroCity about cable cam that flies over the stadium. And I thought of the drones, and I know you're a drone operator. I know nothing about drones. How do they stabilize something that's flying in the air, on propellers, and there's a camera on it? How do you get stable shots?
Well, it's like the gimbal that's holding the camera is the thing that stabilizes the shot. It's not like you can move the drone like this. Like actually that one right there, if you can see it, the one I just bought was like a few months ago, or a month ago, is the DJI's like new FPV drone. So this is the first one that you can like kind of actually swoop around like a bird, basically, or a guy in a squirrel suit. Which it's a lot of fun.
What are you talking about?
Funny enough, one of the guys that does Skycam does that. He was on a team. He used to fly around in a squirrel suit. You ever seen those big, like, they're not skydivers. They're kind of like skydivers, but they're in like a suit that you just like put your arms out and you basically have like little wings.
The stuff with the webbing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're insane. And this guy's insane. He was showing me pictures. It's like jumping off of mountains. It's wild. But yeah, it's just that little gimbal that makes it stable. Plus, like, I mean, if you get too crazy, it's going to look unstable. So it's kind of, a mix of the technology that's in the actual aircraft or anything like that. And the same thing with those Skycams, it's the stabilization of their system, but it's also like, the skills of the operator that's using it. Again, going back to the person that's using the tool. I mean, you could do stupid things with a drone or with that. And it's if you do something too jerky or, if you're not familiar with what you're doing or trying to do something that's not going to look smooth, then you're going to see the imperfections of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes sense. It makes sense.
Glaz is sitting there dying to jump in this conversation.
I see him.
The whole time I knew he was like, I know the answer. I know the answer.
No, you know what I'm thinking about? We're always talking about, technology and how it evolves and changes, and drones over the last like 5 years, it's cool because you can tell now the difference between what Frank's talking about with the FPV drone and a regular drone, because you don't lose your horizon on a normal drone. Well, you don't want to. The FPV drones, they're designed to look like you're flying as a bird, and you're losing your horizon. So we now, after flying drones for so long, can tell, oh, that's an FPV drone. That's a regular drone.
Yeah.
So it's kind of crazy. Going back to Dutch angles too. The Dutch angle is generally used for something when something's amiss or something's going wrong. And you get that weird angle sideways. You're like, something's up. But like Joe said, he's using it in cool like videos with the Giants. Ripping plays and doing cool stuff. So the ways things are used in different circumstances are changing, and it's cool to keep up with.
Yeah. Go ahead, Joe.
As always, the tech part of that, the gyro itself, because all these things are based on, if you look at the horizon inside in a plane, as the plane shifts, this thing keeps tilting to tell you where your horizon is, as Glaz was saying. It keeps you level so it knows where it is. Those were mechanical. Those were fluid that would adjust. You know, if the plane went this way, the fluid would bring it back to level so you knew your plane was pitched to the right. That all now happens digitally. So again, in those all those devices that those two guys are talking about, there's a gyro that's making those adjustments to tell you what you want to do. And what Frank was just talking about, and Glass followed up with it, you can now freeze that so that it doesn't adjust, so that when you tilt it, it stays in that position. It lets you know you're flying on an angle, as exactly as a bird would do. If you watched a hawk, when it glides down, it moves that, tilts it, and does it. Its eyes actually do make that gyro adjustment so that it's not flying sideways. Its eyes are still this way, but the wings tilt down. So I wanted to give you the inside scoop on the technology.
That's good, because I had a follow-up question, and from what I just learned, that's the difference between that FPV drone and the regular drone. The fact that the regular drone will never lose the horizon, right?
Yes.
And then the FPV, if I chose, I could freeze it and fly like the bird. I got it now.
Well, the difference is also like a non-FPV drone, which is like, all right, so it's perfect. I have both of them behind me. So this one right here, the Phantom 4, or like any of the Phantom series or the Mavic series before this one came out with DJI, which is the FPV drone, they all would like you don't have the option to do that. It's not an option in the actual aircraft. So you're only flying either this way, up and down, or you can move like that way. So you can't actually, there's no option to do that. Now this one is actually more of a hybrid drone. You can go into 3 different modes, and you can have that same regular, just this movement, and it takes away that. It takes away that little like swoop, if you want to call it that. And then you can go into full FPV. And then it just adds a whole other dynamic to the way you fly, which is also something I had to kind of learn the first time I put it in the air. But it actually feels more natural doing it that way.
There's so much.
Remember,
it's called
what
roll.
the drone. We talk about technology evolution. This is all those flight sites that they use now for everything. These were all done on helicopters, or they were done outside of a plane.
Yeah.
So they would mount the cameras on that, and they would mount them on the rails, or they would mount them outside, and they would do flyovers. So if you wanted to have, a flyover in New York City, you literally had to rent a helicopter with all this gear. The expense was ginormous. Now you see it in everything. You see these shots everywhere. It's probably the most used technique, because you got guys like Frank and Claus, and the technology that they operate. You can do all that stuff. I don't want to say inexpensively, because they're both really expensive to use, the guys, but way cheaper than renting a helicopter, a pilot, a camera operator, and all that additional technology.
Yeah, and Lou, real quick, I'll just compare it to, not that anybody's like doing that, and then doing like when I operate the Jitacam, which is the jib in the air, which is a suspended jib upside down, and it's like I pilot that. So there's 2 operators, one's controlling the camera, one's controlling the arm, which I control the arm, which I can make it go all the way around and up and down, basically. So I can make those same kind of moves with the, in tandem with the guy that's operating the camera, and he has the regular pan left and right and tilting up and down, but there are different heads that you can put on that Jitacam that gives you that you can operate. Mostly don't do it in broadcast. That would be more something for like a film shoot. Right. But you can add that third element of roll, is what Glass and I were just not of approval. That was the term, not swoop. I guess I was just doing it because it's
quick sidebar. It's called roll.
Not swoop.
But yeah, it gives you that third element. So that's why when I put that thing in the air, it took me a second, but once you understand how to do it, you understand that how to use it, then it's kind of comes second nature.
Glass, we spoke about shaky cams, a more formal look, things looking steady, things looking staged. If a client comes to you at Urban Visuals and says, I want something kind of informal. Do you coach them on anything? Do you have any techniques? Do you have any thoughts on how you would, give them the guidance that you do to create the great product?
Well, we could make up an example and work through it. say a client comes to me and they want an ad, like we were talking about earlier in terms of marketing, and they want their ad to be more intimate. Like they're talking right to their audience. Then I could suggest them making a talking right to your camera video, and you guys are cringing because I called it that, I bet. But like literally, like you take your iPhone and market to your iPhone, which is your audience. People sit in their houses all day with their phones in their hand scrolling Instagram. And when you hit something like that, it gives you the feeling of like a FaceTime video. It's like I'm talking right to you. I'm not a company, I'm a person, running my company, and this is what we're going to offer you, and this is why you're going to use us. So I guess a way to look more informal is to do those kind of videos. The leader of an industry, leader of a company, talking to his camera about his offer and why it's important for you, not an audience of people. So
Yeah.
that's kind of a way to get that informal look.
Would you use a real camera to do that, as you explained earlier, by just kind of holding, doing that type of thing? Or would you just grab their phone or your phone and shoot?
Depends on their budget, I guess.
Yeah.
Like if you don't have a lot of money, if you're starting a brand, and you're all your expenses are on you, then grab your iPhone, talk to your audience just like that. Like Joe was saying earlier, the cameras on the phones now they're incredible. You're not shooting television commercials with them like Apple says, but you can certainly shoot a marketing video with them. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, guys, what a great episode of Crew Call. I learned a whole lot of stuff. FPV drones, losing the horizon, full stack of talent, and Dutch, shaky cams and not. So thank you all. I mean, it was really fascinating, and I appreciate your time. And guys, I look forward to seeing you next time. Have a
Bye,
good
Lou.
one.
Thanks, Lou.
PX.
See you guys later.